They were a team of warriors who triumphed in the dark. Each of them was precious and should be protected at all costs. Thank you very much for your understanding. Your Highness, Rodrigo heaved a sigh of relief. Given Destin's special status, a lot of people had been keeping a close eye on him. They would be easily exposed if all the undercover agents gathered together. You should be familiar with what's going on in the monarchy. Tell me, what is the current situation? Destin asked again. Your Highness, it's just as Rodrigo was about to speak. A series of hurried footsteps was heard downstairs. They exchanged glances and immediately grew vigilant. Before they could even act, a horde of masked assassins charged at them, each with a fierce look in their eyes. Given their formidable presence, they were clearly not ordinary men. The one taking the lead was dressed in red, and he was accompanied by another for individuals dressed in white. The rest were all dressed in black. Who are you guys? Maximus drew his sword and stood in front of Destin. Your Highness, you should go first. I'll hold them off. Rodrigo gradually unsheathed his dagger at his waist. His eyes were flaring with murderous intent. Logan Reese, you destroyed the Dragon Guard and killed our old chief guildmaster. You'll be very sorry for that. The assassin in red roared furiously. Do you think you can take me down with just the few of you? Destin remained seated, being utterly calm. He even took a sip of his tea. It seemed like he was unfazed at all. What an arrogant brat. You'll get a taste of how powerful the Dragon Guard is now. The red cloak assassin suddenly flung his hand in the air as he roared. Get into formation. Kill him. Yes. Without further ado, the remaining white cloak assassins drew their swords and charged at Destin in an instant. They moved so fast that only glimpses of their silhouettes could be seen as they lunged at him. Moreover, they cooperated seamlessly. Both their offense and defense worked well. Once they got into formation, they were even more formidable. I'll take care of you. Maximus threw the scabbard at them and seized the chance to charge at the four white cloak assassins. He entered their formation. You're asking for death. The red cloak assassin sneered, looking at him as if he was already dead. The Dragon Guard was highly organized, with hierarchical levels ranging from ordinary members, officials, guardians, honored members, elders, and assistant chief guild master to the chief guild master. He was one of the honored members, who was also considered one of the higher-ups. The four men who just charged out were the guardians of the Dragon Guard. One had to have at least half the capability of a grandmother in order to qualify as a guardian. When the four white assassins got into formation, even a grandmother martial artist couldn't be compared with their strength. As expected, Maximus was instantly thrown back just as he broke into their formation. He screamed as he fell to the ground with a loud thud, spitting out blood. Although he was close to half a Grandmaster's abilities, he was still considerably inferior to the four guardians of Dragon Guard in formation. Maximus, get back now. Leave them to me. Once Rodrigo saw the situation was turning unfavorable, he immediately dashed toward the information with his sword in hand. In an instant, an intense fight broke out between him and the four guardians. Rodrigo was incredibly fast with his sword. It moved so quickly that it was almost impossible to see clearly. His technique was fierce and forceful, like a tough military approach, without any fancy moves. Each move of his seemed crafted with lethal intent. It was simple, effective, and brutally violent. Despite the mysterious spells of the four guardians, Rodrigo's fast sword made them useless. Whenever they attempted to change formation, Rodrigo quickly saw the weakness and broke through with his quick strikes. After a series of clashes, he beat the four guardians. I didn't expect General Rodrigo to be such a powerful grandmother martial artist, Cinna exclaimed in surprise. He is Rufus's personal guard and leads a team of spies, Destin said calmly. It shows how skilled he is. From their first meeting with Rodrigo, Destin sensed his impressive abilities. Given that Rufus entrusted Rodrigo to travel to Oakvale, it was evident that he possessed significant skills and abilities. Cinna narrowed his eyes and said General Rodrigo is only in his 30s, but reaching this level is amazing. Prince Rufus surely has some hidden talents. The battle is about to end, Destin suddenly said. And just like that, Rodrigo attacked even faster. His moves were like big waves, hitting again and again. The already retreating Four Guardians faced increased pressure. Before they could last 10 moves, Rodrigo's swift blade sent them flying. They were hurt and fell down, coughing up blood. HMPH trying to hurt Prince Logan. You have to deal with me first. Rodrigo looked really strong and ready to fight. It was so different from when he was scared of Destin. I didn't expect you to be so strong, the Red Cloak Assassin said, raising his hand to halt the Four Guardians who were ready to continue their assault. Now, it's your turn. Rodrigo lifted his blade, pointing it at the Red Cloak Assassin's face. HMPH, do you think beating those four is enough to challenge me? You really overestimate yourself. The Red Cloak Assassin snorted. Today, I'll show you how powerful a dragon guard can be. After saying that, he pulled out his sword, turned into a shadow, and jumped at Rodrigo. Rodrigo refused to back down. He leapt and collided head-on with the Red Cloak Assassin. The two grandmother martial artists quickly engaged in a fierce clash. The second floor of the regal court was nearly destroyed in an instant. Their fight extended into the courtyard, leaving it in ruins. Their swords glinted in the dark. A clash of gold and iron, creating a dazzling spectacle. Destin, who do you think will win between them? Cinna suddenly asked. Destin narrowed his eyes and said, in terms of strength, the Dragon Guard's member has a slight advantage, but General Rodrigo is more daring and ready to risk it all. It's a showdown where the brave prevail. He paused and continued, however. General Rodrigo's boldness narrows the gap in strength between them. The actual winner depends on how they perform. He wasn't in a hurry to intervene because he wasn't sure if the Dragon Guard had any hidden moves. Attacking rashly might lead to falling into a trap, especially if there were other aces lurking nearby. After a short fight in the courtyard, the Red Cloak Assassin grew impatient. The momentum shifted against the Dragon Guard, and their enemies seized the opportunity in the chaos. The royal forces, in particular, started covertly surrounding them. His first plan to quickly beat Destin and get revenge for Alaric was now in jeopardy. If things took too long and the skilled royal warriors showed up, he might not be able to get away. To prevent more trouble, he needed to quickly deal with the troublesome Rodrigo and then eliminate Destin. Furious, the Red Cloak Assassin yelled, I don't have time for this. Get lost. His temper flared, and he abandoned caution to launch a relentless attack. This left the once evenly matched Rodrigo quickly at a disadvantage. There was indeed a gap in their strengths. Rodrigo's previous ability to stand firm against the Red Cloak Assassin was solely based on his bold courage. Now, with the Red Cloak Assassin fighting desperately, that advantage was gone. The upcoming battle was all about raw power. Die! The Red Cloak Assassin shouted, intensifying his increasingly fierce attacks, forced into a defensive retreat. Rodrigo could only block without a chance to counter. If this continued, he would be completely defeated in less than 3 minutes. We can't wait any longer. Upon seeing this, Destin's expression turned cold. Just as he was about to step in and help, a sudden sense of caution struck him. Before he could react, he heard a bang, and a black mist erupted beneath his feet. Instinctively, Destin activated his energy armor. However, a strange and eerie scene unfolded. The black mist penetrated Destin's energy armor and relentlessly seeped into his body. The horror intensified as the mist invaded his eyes, ears, mouth, nose, and even the pores on his skin. How can this be? Destin exclaimed in shock. Even with Destin's vast experience, he had never encountered a situation like this before. The energy armor couldn't withstand it. What on earth? Destin immediately channeled his energy to force out the poison. Despite the eerie nature of the black mist, pushing the poison out wasn't impossible for him. Destin, are you okay? Cinna's worried voice came from outside the mist. Mr. Schaefer, don't come over. This mist is poisonous. Dustin immediately warned, but it was too late. Cinna dashed into the mist without a second thought. In less than 3 seconds, he turned pale and collapsed. Having recently recovered from a serious illness, Cinna was already weakened, and the potent poison further exacerbated his condition. Mr. Schaefer. Dustin's face quickly changed. Without thinking about himself, he grabbed Cinna from the toxic mist and started meditating to heal him. Under Dustin's treatment, the poison that had entered Cinna's body started to dissipate gradually. On the contrary, Dustin's situation was dire. The toxic mist had invaded his organs. Any further delay would result in severe injury, if not death. Unfortunately, with his focus on detoxifying Cinna, he couldn't tend to himself. He could only allow the mist to invade his body. Amidst this tense moment, the red-cloaked assassin had already settled the battle with Rodrigo. After a fierce fight, he severely injured Rodrigo at the cost of his arm. Dustin, prepare to die. The red-cloaked assassin saw Dustin helping Cinna and took the chance. He charged forward, aiming a fierce blow at Dustin's head. The red-cloaked assassin attacked fast and hard, catching Dustin by surprise from behind. Dustin was still busy helping Cinna and couldn't defend himself. When the assassin's blade came, Dustin quickly activated his energy armor, creating a protective shield. Clang! The red-cloaked assassin's blade hit Dustin's energy armor, creating a faint ripple. The immense recoil sent the assassin's weapon flying, making him stagger backward. How is this possible? The red-cloaked assassin's eyes widened in shock. His full-force surprise attack should have at least gravely wounded Dustin. Yet, Dustin sat unscathed while the assassin was pushed back. He was surprised that Dustin's strength might be even greater than his. Theft. Suddenly, as Dustin was still healing, he spat out black blood. His face turned ashen. The poison from earlier was potent. Even with his robust body, Dustin couldn't resist it. The primary reason was the extensive energy consumption in treating Cinna. It left him unable to suppress the toxins invading his organs. In addition to that, the red-cloaked assassin's surprise attack prompted Dustin to defend himself forcefully. As a result, he got hurt and ended up coughing blood. Haha, it looks like you're almost finished. The red-cloaked assassin mocked, thinking he had dealt a significant blow to Dustin. This strike will be the end of you. The red-cloaked assassin reached for his flying blade. He closed the gap and swung it at Dustin. Your Highness! The heavily wounded Rodrigo roared. With a powerful kick, he used his body as a weapon and crashed into the red-cloaked assassin's back. With a grunt, the assassin was sent flying several meters. He landed in a sorry state with his sword dropped to the ground. As for Rodrigo, the forceful collision caused him to spit blood and fly backward. Already suffering from severe injuries, he lay on the ground, unable to move. He was left incapacitated. Damn, you're asking for death. The red-cloaked assassin cursed. He stood up and glared at Rodrigo. Since you enjoy playing the hero, I'll take you out first. With a sudden leap, the red-cloaked assassin raised his palm and aimed a fierce strike at Rodrigo's head. Unable to move, Rodrigo could only raise his arms in a feeble attempt to block. A loud bang echoed. Rodrigo's arms fractured instantly. He was thrown like a ragdoll, crashing into a wall and coughing up blood incessantly. Run, Your Highness, run! Rodrigo shouted hoarsely despite his condition. Run, where to? The red-cloaked assassin turned to glance at Dustin. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. He had almost forgotten that Rodrigo was just a minor character. Killing him held no significance. Dustin was the key figure. To avoid complications, he had to be dealt with swiftly. Dustin, prepare to die. Once again, the assassin leapt into the air, delivering a full-force palm strike toward the back of Dustin's head. It was a vital attack. Even if Dustin had his energy armor on, it wouldn't withstand this blow. Whoosh! The strike distorted the air, just as the red-cloaked assassin was about to succeed. Destin, who had been healing Cinna, seemed to sense something. He abruptly turned around and struck out with his palm. Bang! Two powerful strikes collided, creating a loud boom. Destin merely shivered slightly and easily stopped all the force. Destin's strike sent the red-cloaked assassin flying. He crashed hard onto the ground with blood pouring from his mouth. Most of his circulatory pathways shattered. How can you be this powerful? The red-cloaked assassin clutched his chest. He looked terrified. Despite being poisoned and heavily injured, Destin triumphed with just one hit. The red-cloaked assassin couldn't help but wonder if Destin was truly that much stronger. Did you not investigate my strength before ambushing me? Destin's voice was cold, and a bit of black blood stained his lips. Cinna got rid of all the poison in his body, so he wasn't in danger anymore. Destin was hurt and poisoned, but because he was really skilled, he could endure it for a little while. Although you're just a grandmother martial artist, we are more than enough to kill you. The red-cloaked assassin interrupted. On the day the Dragon Guard was destroyed, most of its high-ranking members were obliterated. The few left were scattered and couldn't regroup. A recent message about Destin meeting with monarchy spies led the assassin to believe that Destin was behind the West Lucosian monarchy's plan. He thought he could seek revenge, but he had underestimated Destin's formidable strength. How? I'd probably be dead by now if I were just an ordinary grandmother martial artist. Do you think I'd have survived till today? Really? The red-cloaked assassin's eyes widened in disbelief. Are you an ultimate grandmother? Destin being only in his early 20s and reaching the status of an ultimate grandmother seemed unbelievable and frightening. I have one question. How did you find us? Destin asked seriously. He was extra careful not to be followed, but as soon as he arrived at the regal court, he was ambushed. Something odd was taking place. I'll take you on. The red-cloaked assassin clenched his teeth, fought through his injuries, and charged at Destin once more. But as soon as he got close, Destin grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. Trapped by Destin's energy, the assassin couldn't move or fight back. If you don't want to die, just tell me the truth, Destin warned, squeezing the red-cloaked assassin's neck. The assassin's face turned red. He struggled to breathe, and his veins popped out. The fear of death took over him instantly. I'll talk. Someone mysterious sent us a secret message to let us know where you were hiding. The red-cloaked assassin replied hoarsely. Who's this mysterious person? Destin pressed on. I don't know. He didn't reveal anything, but he knew our secret code. Probably a spy from the Dragon Guard, the assassin replied raspingly. A spy? Destin's face turned serious. The message arriving right on time hinted at someone knowing their plans beforehand. In other words, there might be a traitor among them. Rodrigo was the brave royal guard protecting Destin and therefore seemed reliable. Destin wondered about the traitor's identity. Suddenly, Destin felt a sharp pain in his back. A knife had stabbed through him. The blood on the blade carried faint black traces. Destin stared at the knife in disbelief. When he turned around, he was shocked to see that it was Cinna who was holding the knife. Destin was baffled. He stared at Cinna after the sudden attack. He had suspicions about many people, such as Maximus and Brooke, but never about Cinna. Cinna had risked his life for Destin before and had sacrificed so much for the West Lucosian monarchy, even at the risk of his own poisoning and injury. Destin felt indebted and went all out to save him. Cinna was like family to him. As a death warrior for the monarchy, it was unbelievable that he would betray him. Mr. Schaefer, what are you doing? Destin asked with a trembling voice. Even now, he could hardly believe what was happening. Destin, I'm sorry, but I had no choice, Cinna said with a complex expression and a hint of guilt. I told you not to dig into the past. It would bring deadly consequences. Why didn't you listen? You could have lived a peaceful life. Why did you choose this path? You. Who are you, really? Destin frowned deeply. I am Cinna, the vice commander of the Central Cavalry in West Lucosia. But before that, I was a spy for the Dragon Guard, Cinna explained with a sigh. Dustin struggled to digest this unexpected revelation. He had never imagined Cinna to be a spy for the Dragon Guard. So it was Cinna who had informed the red-cloaked assassins group about their location. He was the one who caused the mysterious black fog. He had even poisoned himself to create an opening for the red-cloaked assassins' ambush. The complicated deceit had completely caught Dustin off guard. Even now, he questioned if he had made a mistake somewhere. Truthfully, when your father became the Prince of West Lucosia, the Dragon Guard had already started plotting. Rustin, the former general of the Central Cavalry, and I were all part of their plan, Cinna explained helplessly. Learning of their collusion shattered Dustin's trust. You and Rustin planned the massacre? I trusted you and never once thought you were involved in that attack. Dustin's eyes turned red. Why, my mother was generous to you. My father treated you as family. Why betray them? I'm sorry. It's my duty, Cinna admitted guiltily. I'm a spy for the Dragon Guard. I'm indebted to you and the West Lucosian monarchy. But I had no other choice. I owe you in this lifetime. If there's another one, I'd gladly serve you. I don't understand. The Dragon Guard is destroyed. Why do you still work for them? Dustin struggled to comprehend. Despite being a spy, Cinna could have avoided danger if he had stayed hidden. He could even use the situation to clear his name and live peacefully. Cinna sighed. Dustin, once you become a spy, there's no turning back. Rustin is my superior. He's still alive and is now the assistant chief guildmaster of the Dragon Guard. He'll come back stronger. It's fated that neither of us can escape. Nonsense. Fate is what we make of it, Dustin retorted angrily. You choose your path. You've betrayed us and the sacrifices of the West Lucosian soldiers. We'll wait you in hell. In a fit of rage, Dustin snapped the red-cloaked assassin's neck and punched Cinna. From the moment his chest was pierced, Dustin was on the brink of death. This punch, filled with anger and resentment, marked his final strike. He had never expected to die at the hands of his most trusted ally. The only option for Dustin now was to go down with Cinna. Facing Dustin's swift iron fist, Cinna instinctively raised his arms to block it. Thud! A muffled sound echoed as Dustin's punch directly broke Cinna's arms. Cinna flew like a sandbag. He crashed 20 feet away and spat out blood. Traitor! Dustin's rage made his eyes bulge as he prepared to pursue. Cinna realized the danger and swiftly formed hand seals. With a stomp of his foot, he instantly disappeared, leaving only a pile of clothes. That was undoubtedly an extraordinary vanishing technique. Dustin started coughing up lots of blood as soon as Cinna vanished. Dustin was in critical condition due to old wounds, potent poison, and a blade in his chest. He was on the verge of collapsing. Your Highness, Rodrigo roared in frustration, but he couldn't move due to his severe injuries. Dustin! Maximus was barely able to stay upright either. They were all in dire states, and there were still many Dragon Guard assassins around. Maximus, take Rodrigo and leave. Dustin barely supported his shattered body. He tried not to collapse. As long as the knife wasn't pulled out, he might be able to hold on for a short while. Dustin, what about you? Maximus was panicking. Among the three, Dustin's injuries were undoubtedly the most severe. Don't worry, I'm skilled. I won't die. Dustin forced a smile through the pain. Nevertheless, Maximus was worried. But no more words. Take Rodrigo and go. Maximus was about to say something, but Dustin interrupted him with a shout. Maximus helped Rodrigo up and staggered away with him. The Dragon Guard assassins didn't chase after them. Instead, they surrounded Dustin. Their goal was clear. Maximus and Rodrigo were out of their hunting range. There was no need to waste energy on them. Dustin, you're at the brink of defeat. Surrender immediately. Four assassins in white brandished their knives. They eyed Dustin fiercely. Behind them stood a group of black, clad aces from the Dragon Guard. They were all skilled fighters. Remnants of the Dragon Guard, come at me if you're not afraid to die. Dustin grinned. His eyes reflected a resolute acceptance of his fate. Kill him. At the command, all the Dragon Guard assassins surged forward and closed in on Dustin for another life and death battle. 3 minutes later, all the Dragon Guard assassins lay in a pool of blood. Dustin was drenched in blood. He staggered, barely holding himself up. His life signs weakened, and his powerful energy dissipated. He was on the verge of collapse. The surroundings grew hazy. His heartbeat was near silent. After everything I've been through, I die at the hands of my own people. How ironic. Dustin chuckled softly as he looked at the knife in its chest. He grabbed it with both hands and pulled it out. In an instant, blood sprayed. Since death was inevitable, he didn't want to have a knife stuck in him. As he pulled it out, the world spun. With a final thud, he collapsed. Everything went black. At that moment, Dustin's pendant glowed and vanished into his forehead. As the pendant entered his body, it instantly transformed into a powerful energy coursing through Dustin's limbs and bones. The strange poison Cinna unleashed swiftly dissipated upon contact with this energy. Dustin's previous internal injuries, including the fatal wound from the knife, gradually began to repair under the influence of this energy. A vibrant life force emerged within this energy. It pulled Dustin back from the brink of death. Meanwhile, at a distant house, Grace suddenly shuddered and coughed up blood. Her once flawless face turned pale. What's happening? Has the pendant been damaged? Confusion marred her expression. This is bad. Without hesitation, Grace immediately cast a spell and transformed into a streak of light, heading straight toward a certain destination. In the secret base of the Dragon Guard headquarters, a man in a ghostly mask lounged on a fancy golden dragon throne. He briefly closed his eyes for a break. He gave off an air of supreme authority, as if he owned the world. On both sides of him stood a team of death warriors with grim faces. These death warriors were trained aces of the Dragon Guard. They not only practiced dark magic, but also constantly fortified their bodies with poisons. They rendered themselves tireless, impervious to pain, and fearlessly resilient to death. From the moment of their training, their emotions were sealed. In their eyes, there was no distinction between men and women, no difference in age, and certainly no concept of right or wrong. They only obeyed orders, ready to sacrifice their lives without hesitation to fulfill their missions. These death warriors were no longer considered human. They had been transformed into killing machines, becoming the most potent force within the Dragon Guard. Suddenly, a hurried sound of footsteps echoed outside of the courtyard. Shortly after, a figure somersaulted into the courtyard. The figure was injured and left a few drops of blood with every 2 steps. The sound of persistent coughing resonated. The figure emerged from the shadows and entered the hall. Cinna, visibly injured from Dustin's attack, stood before the masked man on the dragon throne. Mr. Schaefer, are you hurt? The masked man asked in a deep, raspy voice. Just a scratch won't kill me, Cinna replied. He coughed up blood in between words. Looks more than a scratch. Take this medicine. The masked man waved his hand and a black tablet shot out. Thanks. Cinna caught the tablet and swallowed it right away. This medicine from the Dragon Guard was exceptionally rare. It could heal serious injuries really fast, but only high-ranking members got to use it. Mr. Rever, Cinna began, but Reagan raised a hand and interrupted him. I'm now Reagan Judd. You can call me Mr. Judd or Sir Judd. The past is best left behind. Yes, Sir Judd. Cinna nodded respectfully. Mr. Schaefer, how did the task I assigned you go? Reagan inquired. I stabbed Dustin's heart. He should be dead by now, Cinna reported. Excellent. Reagan nodded approvingly. Mr. Schaefer, you've accomplished a great feat. Sir Judd, can you release my daughter now? Cinna pleaded. His loyalty to the Dragon Guard was due to manipulation. His beloved daughter was held captive by the Dragon Guard. Cinna was only allowed to meet her briefly every year. Any act of defiance would not only cost him his life, but also bring torment upon his daughter. The Dragon Guard's means of controlling spies were simple yet brutally effective. In order to ensure his daughter's safety, Cinna had no choice but to kill Dustin. Mr. Schaefer, your daughter is safe and well cared for. No need to worry, Reagan stated casually. Sir Judd, you promised to let us go once this was done, Cinna said while frowning. I'll keep my promise, but now isn't the time. Reagan's voice became rough. You took down Dustin, but the West Lucosian monarchy remains. We won't stop until it crumbles. The West Lucosian monarchy is powerful. How can we easily defeat them? Cinna asked puzzledly. I've planned this for 10 years, Reagan calmly replied. Rufus is dying, and he won't last long. When Dustin is gone, chaos will follow. I'll place a puppet in power and seize control. Reagan's ambition was clear in his words. The Oakvale royalty was insignificant compared to the true threat of the West Lucosian monarchy. Once he controlled it and the mighty Black Dragon army, the world would be at his feet. Sir Judd, must we be so ruthless? Cinna's expression was conflicted. Remember, back in the day, before he could finish, Reagan cut in. Are you having second thoughts? To achieve greatness, one must be ruthless. Softness achieves nothing. Consider your future and that of your daughter. Some actions can't be undone. I understand. Cinna reluctantly complied when at the mention of his daughter. Sir Judd, what are your orders? Reagan raised his glass. Everything's set. We just need the final blow. Tomorrow, we head to West Lucosia. After all this planning, it's time to close the trap. It was unclear how long it had been when Dustin slowly regained consciousness. His upper body was wrapped in thick bandages. His limbs were feeble and weak, and his breath was visibly frail. Didn't I die? Dustin glanced at his palm, then around the room. The place seemed somewhat familiar. It was as though he had been there before. You're awake. Grace entered the room carrying a bowl of soup. You were severely injured. Fortunately, you're resilient. It wasn't easy to save you. Did you save me? Dustin was astonished. Who else? Grace said lightly. The pendant I gave you protected your vital organs. It infused powerful vitality into your body when it mattered most. It was a close call, but it pulled you back from the brink of death. I didn't expect that pendant could bring me back from the brink. Do you have any more of those treasures? Maybe give me a couple. Dustin shamelessly asked. Haha, do you think I have them lying around? Grace replied irritatedly. Creating a pendant takes 10 years off my life. If it gets destroyed, I feel the pain too. I've only given the pendants to 2 people in my life. That's father and you. 10 years of life. That's incredibly valuable, Dustin exclaimed in surprise. Such treasures made using life force were extraordinary, but they were equally risky as they disappeared after a single use. Do you think I'm joking with you? Grace replied calmly. If your life weren't at stake, I wouldn't have given you that pendant. Your Royal Highness, I am deeply grateful. Dustin expressed his gratitude. Is that all for saving your life? Grace teased. If your Royal Highness faces any trouble, I'll give my all to assist you. Dustin vowed earnestly. That's more like it. Grace chuckled. By the way, how long have I been unconscious? Dustin suddenly asked. 3 days, Grace replied. What? That long? Dustin frowned. Don't worry, your friends are all safe and sound. I've reached out to them and have arranged safe houses. They should be fine for now, Grace reassured him. That's a relief. Dustin sighed. He feared that Cinna might have led the Dragon Guard to wipe out everyone while he was unconscious. Dustin, considering your strength, very few in Oakvale could match you. I examined your body. You were poisoned and stabbed in the chest. What happened? Grace asked cautiously. Dustin was an ultimate grandmother. After Alaric's death and the destruction of most of the Dragon Guard aces, there weren't many in Oakvale who could fatally wound him. Let's not dwell on it. There was a traitor by my side who took advantage of my vulnerability and stabbed me. Dustin's expression turned cold. It would have been understandable if he faced a powerful enemy and sustained severe injuries due to a lack of skill. However, being betrayed by someone he trusted turned the situation into more than just a simple injury. It was actually his self-confidence that took a real hit. Dustin Reese, let me remind you, a camel that starved to death is still bigger than a horse. The Dragon Guard might have been destroyed, but the remnants of this organization are still powerful. You have to be very careful. Grace sounded very serious. I know that. Dustin nodded. I have learned my lesson. I'll never allow this to happen again. I hope so, Grace replied. Anything special happened in the 3 days that I was unconscious? Dustin asked. You reminded me of something. Grace suddenly thought of something and exclaimed. According to the information I received from the royal family, the remnants of Dragon Guard appear to have left Oakvale. They even shut down all of the secret businesses they owned. They left Oakvale. Where did they go? Dustin continued asking. I can't say for sure, but according to the information gathered from all over, the Dragon Guard remnants might have moved on to West Lucosia, Grace replied. No way, I have to go back right now. Dustin tried to get up from bed as he spoke. However, he gasped in pain as he accidentally yanked on his wound in haste. Stop moving around. Grace reached out to hold him down. You were gravely injured. It's also a penetrating wound. I have already applied DuBalm on it. Still, you need a few more days to completely recover. There's no time for that. The Dragon Guard is very well prepared. They are going to West Lucosia with an ulterior motive. I have to stop them, Dustin said in a low voice. How are you going to stop them in your current condition? Grace frowned and continued. Regan Jed is not someone you can take on haphazardly. He also has a few trained professionals assisting him. You couldn't even defeat him when you were healthy. How would you do it now that you're down with a serious injury? Even if I couldn't defeat him, I could at least inform the West Lucosian monarchy so they could prepare themselves. Dustin replied, You don't have to worry about that. I have already sent your father a secret letter when you were unconscious. I believe that he's made some arrangements and is all prepared. Grace had predicted this. Dustin was a little taken aback when he heard that. He had no idea that Grace was such a conscientious person. She had prepared for everything beforehand. It was no wonder that Valen Linzer was so proud of his daughter. Your Highness, thank you for all that you've done. Nevertheless, I still need to return to West Lucosia. Dustin slowly sat up straight. He seemed to have calmed down a little. Regardless, West Lucosia is my home. I can't just spectate while there's a great impending danger. You can certainly go home, but you must do so with a plan. If not, your presence will be the Achilles heel of the West Lucosian monarchy. Grace warned. From her understanding, Rufus was someone who cared very deeply for his son. If Dustin was in any danger, he'd lose his mind. If that happened, it'd give the remnants of Dragon Guard an opportunity to defeat him. I know that. Dustin nodded. I will keep a low profile when I return this time. I won't have contact with anyone from the West Lucosian monarchy as well. I'll just investigate this covertly. I'll expose Dragon Guard's evil plan when the time is right. That'd be best, Grace agreed. She continued, still, I don't think you can do this alone. You'll need some help. Rufus sent a SWAT team to Oakvale. They're under my command, Dustin said. A SWAT team is not even enough to scratch the surface. Grace shook her head. How about this? I'll go with you. We have quite a few people with special talents and abilities at Regal Observatory. They're all under my command and they should be able to help you. You? Dustin was surprised to hear that as he looked Grace up and down. He said, Your Highness, you're a very cherished princess. You mustn't put yourself at risk, and I can't involve you in this. What, you don't think I can do it? Grace smiled and waved her hand. Suddenly, a sharp and white light shot out the window. It destroyed the artificial mountain in the garden. There was a loud explosion. The artificial mountain was blown to ashes. The internal energy of a grandmother. Dustin's pupil constricted. You're actually a grandmother martial artist. Female grandmasters were very rare. It was hard for women to undergo the training to become a grandmother due to their bodily limitations. Dustin really had no idea that Grace was actually a grandmother because she looked so fragile. The most important point was that he had failed to realize this despite spending so much time with her. Even with all his experience, he thought that this woman was very good at hiding her talent, too. I may not be as strong as you are, but I'm not that bad. I can absolutely help you shoulder some problems. Grace smiled lightly. If you were a man, you'd definitely be the heir to the throne. Dustin praised her sincerely. It should be made known that the people from Regal Observatory were not good at martial arts. They mainly studied divinatory practices. If Grace was a grandmother martial artist, she must be a real whiz when it came to the divinatory practices. He already had a vague idea when she gave him the revival talisman. Stop joking around. I'll only help you on one condition. Grace changed the topic. What would that be? Dustin asked. It's very simple. You have to help me find Draken Essence. Grace cut straight to the point. Of course, I would play it fair when we find it. We'll split it evenly. You're not going to be king anyway. Why are you looking for the Draken Essence? Dustin was a little curious. Everyone's responsible for the rise and fall of their country. Grace replied frankly. Sure, you've helped me so many times. I must repay you. When West Lucosia is at peace again, I'll help you find Draken Essence. Dustin finally agreed. Grace had helped him so much. She even saved his life once. He must repay her one way or another. All right, we have a deal then. Grace smiled. Your Highness, I must leave for West Lucosia as soon as possible. Could you please help me arrange it? Dustin asked. No problem. Leave it to me, Grace replied as she turned to leave. There was a private jet taking off from Oakvale the next morning. It was headed toward West Lucosia. Dustin looked at the clouds from his window on the plane. At this moment, the sun was just rising. It was a beautiful sight to behold. The sun's fiery red rays illuminated the layers of cloud, and the whole sky had a reddish glow. Dustin Reese. Grace suddenly walked over with some documents in her hands and sat next to him. She said, the Zenith Society just announced some new changes to 3 of their lists. It's quite interesting. Would you like to take a look at it? List? What list? Dustin turned to look at her. The lists that were renewed this time were the Divine Weapon list, the Legendary list, and the Astonishing World list. I'll start with the first list they published, the Divine Weapon list. First on the Divine Weapon list is the Celestial Slate, which belongs to Orion Foyer. Second on the list, the Dragon Sparrow Sword, which belongs to Dustin Reese. Third on the list, the Inferno Fury Spear, which belongs to Reagan Judd. Fourth, the Snow Breeze Sword, which belongs to Cyrus Hadley. Fifth, the Almighty Dagger, which belongs to Eloy Marshall. Sixth, the Starshine Sword, which belongs to Frost Bane. Seventh, the Thunderblade, which belongs to Taylor Quinton. Eighth, the Hell Sword, which belongs to Glenn Hadley. Ninth, the Celestial Blade, which belongs to Dustin Reese. 10th, the Storm Needles, which belongs to Sam Dawson. Grace read the information available on the list aloud. The Divine Weapon list was quite complete as it included the names of the weapons as well as their respective owners. I don't know if I should be happy or sad. I had no idea that I would own 2 of the 10 weapons listed on the Divine Weapon list. Dustin shook his head when Grace finished reading the list. To be on the Divine Weapon list might be something to be proud of, but it also spelled danger for the bearer of the weapon. As the old saying went, a man's possession would be his own ruin by causing another's greed. It wasn't enough to just own the weapon. The owners must have the ability to keep the weapons as theirs. Otherwise, other skilled martial artists would come around and fight for the ownership of the Divine Weapons. You should just be happy to be the owner of 2 Divine Weapons. Grace smiled slightly. Do you know that there are many skilled martial artists without a suitable weapon? You have to divine weapons. You are the envy of everyone. I don't like trouble. With this divine weapon list published, I think that there will be many skilled martial artists who would challenge me for them. It'd be a hassle then. Dustin sighed. Don't worry. They would have to know their weight before they challenge you. If not, they'd just be courting death. No one would be this stupid. Grace laughed a little. Why would you say that? Dustin cocked his brows slightly. We still have lists to go through. You'll find out. Just keep listening. Grace continued reading the next list. Next, I'll announce the legendary list. Let me explain a little about this list. This list is arranged in accordance with the capability and strength of the chosen ones below 30 years old. Listen closely. First on the legendary list are Dustin Reese and Glenn Hadley. Dustin was stunned. There are two people listed as the first. That's right. Grace nodded. According to the Zenith Society's explanation, you and Glenn are both great grandmasters. Both of you are at a similar level in terms of capability. No one can decide who's stronger before a real battle. As such, they have listed both of you as number one. That makes sense. Dustin nodded. In all honesty, he wasn't sure if he could defeat Glenn. The technique he used to instantly kill Nestor Wilkins was enough to show off his prowess. Let's continue. Second on the list, Abigail Robinson. Third on the list, Taylor Quinton. Fourth, Scarlett Spanner. Fifth, Finley Hudson. Sixth, Adam Spanner. Seventh, Anders Mosey. Eighth, Kendricks Lang. Ninth, Sam Dawson. 10th, Jude Leaf. Grace read the list without missing any details. After listening to it, Dustin asked curiously, I've heard of most people on the list, but not Taylor Quinton. Who is he? Taylor Quinton is kind of related to your mother. Grace explained, your mother and Taylor share the same last name because they are from the same family. But this person is more mysterious and is very well protected by the Quinton family. He recently became famous. We still don't know what his specialty is. He's from the Quinton family. Dustin narrowed his eyes with a thoughtful look. He didn't know much about his mother's family. She didn't talk much about them either. One thing was for sure, the Quinton family was no ordinary family. Regardless, for Taylor Quinton to be number 3 on the legendary list, he must have his edge. You can get to know him if an opportunity presents itself. After all, you and him are family, Grace said jokingly. I don't even know if he's a friend or foe. I never liked the Quinton family, Dustin said calmly. His mother was such a gentle and kind person. Yet she was kicked out of her own family. She didn't talk about it even after so many years. From that alone, it was obvious that the Quinton family was no good Samaritan. As far as Dustin was concerned, he and Taylor Quinton had nothing to do with each other. However, it must be said that the Quinton family did have their own special way of nurturing talents. Oh, right, Your Highness, with your ability, shouldn't you be on the legendary list as well? Why isn't your name listed? Dustin suddenly asked. This is a list for the martial world. The royal family isn't taken into consideration. Grace smiled. Actually, although the Zenith Society might have a huge intelligence department, they can't guarantee the information they publish to be absolute and ultimate. All the lists are for reference only, and they are non-exhaustive. Dragon Mars is a huge country with many talents. It's possible that there are some remarkable talents hidden somewhere that we haven't yet discovered. That's true as well. Dustin nodded. There would always be something or someone better. Who could guarantee that there wouldn't be another chosen one that hadn't been discovered? Now I'll announce the last list, the Astonishing World List. Grace started explaining again. This list includes only the best of the best in Dragon Mars. Those on the list are big shots. First on the Astonishing World List is, as expected, Orion Foyer, the old grandmother of the Sacred Rhyme Summit. The second and third place on the list have been changed drastically. It used to be Alaric Draken, the leader of Dragon Guard, and Seth Hughes, the Sword Whisperer. Now, Cyrus Hadley, the leader of Sword Union, is second on the list. Third on the list is the leader of Celestial Alliance, Aloy Marshall. Fourth, the leader of Mystic Arts Order, Penelope Solis. Fifth, the new leader of Dragon Guard, Reagan Judd. Sixth, the heir to Sacred Rhyme Summit, Katie Foster. Seventh, the leader of Frostbane Citadel, Frostbane, 2. Eighth, the leader of Bounty League, Elder Shade. Ninth, the leader of Green Dust, Randy Green. 10th, Dustin Reese and Cyrus Hadley. Grace smiled and paused. She said, "How's that? You're the 10th best fighter in Dragon Marsh. Do you still think that others will casually challenge you for your weapons?" The Astonishing World list was more trustworthy than the Legendary list. Dustin and Cyrus currently ranked first on the Legendary list. They also made it to the Astonishing World list. It was a feat that no one had achieved before. If what you say is true, does that mean that the Astonishing World list has a deterrent effect as well? Dustin raised his brows slightly. Of course. You know, those listed in the Astonishing World list are basically grandmasters and really skilled fighters. Unless they are courting death, who would dare to challenge them? Grace replied, "That sounds about right." Dustin nodded. There's been a huge change in the Astonishing World list. Alaric Draken and Seth Hughes passed away one after another. Caesar Fent is still missing, and Nestor Wilkins was killed. We lost 4 of the 10 best fighters from last year. It's a huge loss. We're lucky to have found new and strong fighters to replace them. It's true that new talents will always replace old ones, Grace said. Do you know anything about the new people who just made it to the list? Dustin suddenly asked. The 5th one on the list. Reagan Judd, he is the new leader of Dragon Guard. My father told you about him before. He used to go by Rest and Rever. He finally got what he wanted when Alaric Draken died. I know Reagan Judd. What I don't understand is he was never on the list before. How did he make it to the list after Alaric's death, and how did he make it to the top 5? Dustin was slightly curious. How should I explain this? Reagan has never revealed much about himself. When Alaric was still alive, Reagan was overshadowed and no one paid much attention to him. After Alaric's death, Reagan succeeded him as leader. He quickly took control of the remnants of Dragon Guard with an iron fist. When that happened, the Zenith Society finally realized that Reagan was no ordinary person and ranked him 5th. This was based on their conservative estimation. His true potential should be no weaker than the leaders of the 3 major sects. Grace spoke in a serious tone. Really? Dustin frowned slightly. The gap between those listed on the Astonishing World list was huge. Seth Hughes still won despite taking on 3 of the fighters on the Astonishing World list alone. From this, the gap was obvious for all to see. Besides, Dustin had fought against Nestor Wilkins. His and Nestor's abilities were on par with each other. Dustin had to use the secret Reese technique just so he could win by a little. Even Nestor, who ranked 10th, was very strong. He couldn't imagine how terrifying Reagan would be given that he ranked 5th. He wasn't sure if he would survive the match if he really met Reagan, much less win the fight. He must be extraordinary to become the next in command of Dragon Guard. Grace said seriously, besides, there are many talents in Dragon Guard. Although Seth might have defeated half of the force, those that remain still pose a real risk. Our trip to West Lucosia this time is very dangerous. What? Are you scared? If you regret coming with me, we can still turn back. 11. Dustin flashed a smile. I will, of course, fulfill what I have promised you. Besides, you might not be able to go up against the remnants of Dragon Guard without my help. Grace said, Your Highness, you're absolutely right. When we arrive in West Lucosia, I'll depend on you entirely. Dustin poked fun at her. Stop joking around. You're the mastermind. You have to do your part. My job is to assist only, Grace said in an exasperated manner. You're the more able-bodied one among us. I'm a patient now, and I need to rest. Destin pretended to be weak. Ha, look at you now. You're so healthy that you could fight a bull. How are you a sickly patient? Grace rolled her eyes. She was amazed at the speed of Destin's recovery. His wound had already almost recovered in just one night. He should be able to make a full recovery in another 2 to 3 days. It was very rare to have such a healthy body. Your Highness, we still have a long way to go. Why don't you rest for a while? I'll wake you up when we arrive in West Lucosia. Sure, I'll nap for a while. Grace nodded. She sat beside Destin and closed her eyes. Time flew. Soon, it was noon. The plane slowly landed when it was near evening. They were finally in West Lucosia. In the realm of West Lucosia, within Celestria, Destin and Grace discreetly boarded a business car to avoid any attention after landing. Their undercover agents and guards had arrived in West Lucosia the previous night after traveling separately by plane. This added an extra layer of secrecy and safety to their journey. Grace observed the bustling scenery outside the window. She found the streets of West Lucosia quite intriguing. It was a different sight compared to the hustle and bustle of Oakvale. She seldom ventured beyond Oakvale. She found the distinct regional landscapes and cultural customs to be a source of fascination and novelty. I didn't expect West Lucosia to change so much. When I visited here as a child, most of the buildings were low. Now, in just over a decade, it's as prosperous as Oakvale. Grace remarked, marveling at the view. Yeah, the changes in West Lucosia are significant. Even I find it hard to recognize the roads now. Destin replied with a complex expression. Upon returning to his homeland a decade later, he found that everything had changed. Even if he returned to the castle now, he wouldn't be able to recognize the people in it. I have to say, your father is truly remarkable. Grace sighed, reminiscing about the tales. She added, I've heard from my father that West Lucosia was a barren land over 20 years ago. Plagued by constant warfare, the people here were suffering back then. It was a vast, empty space with famine and hardship everywhere. Then Rufus, the Prince of West Lucosia, appeared and everything changed. She went on. Rufus was born into the prestigious families of Oakvale and displayed extraordinary military talent from a young age. Upon joining the military, he achieved remarkable feats. He remained undefeated in countless battles. He was often hailed as unparalleled and earned titles and honors at a young age. He was destined to be a prominent figure once he returned to Oakvale. She continued, however, no one could have predicted the shocking decision made by this almost godlike man. He chose to settle in the wild and chaotic West Lucosia, guarding the border. During that period, West Lucosia suffered as a wild and desolate region. It grappled with militant leaders, internal conflicts, and recurring invasions by hostile savages. No one among the civil and military officials in the court was willing to tackle this chaotic situation. Yet, Rufus chose to do so. Grace recalled, settling in West Lucosia with only 300 guards. Within a short span of 3 years, he subjugated all the militant leaders, forces across the 18 cities in West Lucosia. When the news reached Oakvale, it caused a sensation. No one knew how Rufus accomplished such a seemingly impossible task. From that point on, he began recruiting soldiers and forming his first army, the Black Dragon Army. She went on, initially underestimated. The Black Dragon Army shocked everyone in their first battle against the Western savages. With just 8,000 West Lucosian cavalry, Rufus routed a staggering 200,000 savages army. This marked a spectacular beginning. She added, over the next decade, the Western savages attempted multiple invasions. They engaged in numerous battles against the Black Dragon Army. The most iconic battle was when Rufus led 100,000 cavalry, chasing down 500,000 of the savages' army, crossing borders, and conquering 15 cities. Before reaching the gates of the savages' chieftain palace, Grace gushed. Their chieftain was terrified. He fled for his life and sought peace with Dragon Marsh. If not for the interference of the Dragon Guard, who issued 9 decrees to urgently recall Rufus to Oakvale, the savage nation would have likely perished. She recounted, after that battle, the savages were thoroughly defeated. For over a decade, they dared not invade us. The people of West Lucosia were able to recover and rebuild their homes, thanks to Rufus' strategic brilliance. The once barren West Lucosia has now become a prosperous land, rivaling the prosperity of Oakvale. This was an unprecedented and magnificent achievement, unmatched by anyone before or since. I must say, your father, Rufus, is truly a great man. He deserves the title of Prince of West Lucosia. Grace concluded with a tone of admiration. A hero of Rufus' caliber was truly a rarity that occurred once in a millennium. I'm surprised you're so well informed. Dustin sighed, taking a deep breath. He went on, to be honest, he never mentioned these matters to me. I'm aware of his status and influence, but his life details remain a mystery to me. Whenever I'm around, he maintains a lighthearted and unserious demeanor, completely lacking in any form of seriousness or authority. He's not only a good leader, but also a good father. The past is over. I hope you will cherish the time ahead, Grace advised with heartfelt sincerity. The stability and prosperity of Dragonmarsh owe much to Rufus' contributions. She sincerely hoped that this legendary prince could find happiness and enjoy a fulfilling, peaceful life until the end of his days. The future. Is there still a chance to cherish the time ahead? Dustin muttered to himself, a sense of melancholy overshadowing him. Rufus, having dedicated his life to the country and its people, now faced the approaching end. As his son, what could Dustin do in the face of life and death? Suddenly, he realized that the past misunderstandings were trivial. Reflecting on his actions, he acknowledged how willful and heedless he had been. Dustin, where are we going next? Grace suddenly asked. Reese Memorial Park, Dustin replied, turning to look out the window. It's been 10 years. I need to pay my respects to my mother. She nodded and refrained from saying anything. The princess, consort of West Lucosia, was a rare female heroine. Her story with the Prince of West Lucosia was a well-known and cherished tale. However, fate had been unkind. Her life had been cut short by the schemes of Dragon Guard. If not for their conspiracy, she would likely still be alive today. Nestled within an expansive 800-acre Reese Memorial Park, or the Ancient House Memorial Park, was a scenic panorama. Wide pathways wandered beneath the cool shade of abundant trees, and the amenities were extensive. Across the changing of seasons, the park transformed with an array of flowers, plants, and trees. Spring painted a lively spectacle with blooming cherry blossoms, while summer invited a refreshing ambience with flourishing greenery. In autumn, a mesmerizing array of cascading maple leaves took center stage, and winter cloaked the landscape in a pristine blanket of white snow. Reese Memorial Park opened its gates to the public. It provided a final resting place not just for the Reese family, but also as a tribute to the soldiers who were instrumental in the monarchy's prosperity. Annually, on Memorial Day and All Saints' Day, the Memorial Park transformed into a lively center. It attracted visitors who came to honor departed, loved ones, or express gratitude to fallen heroes. This practice carried profound meaning for the West Lucosian monarchy. It recognized that the current peace and prosperity were indebted to the sacrifices of these heroes. 1 An hour later, Dustin and Grace reached the main entrance of Reese Memorial Park. They took precautions to conceal their identities through simple disguises. Grace, wearing a textile human skin mask, adopted a more ordinary appearance to avoid attracting attention. Despite the attempt to blend in, she exuded an extraordinary charm. It captured the attention of many as they strolled through the Memorial Park. Guided by memory, Dustin made his way toward the inner depths of the park. If he remembered correctly, his mother's grave should be situated in the most secluded section. After approximately 15 minutes of walking, Dustin finally found the tomb of the princess consort of West Lucosia. Her tomb stood out with its grandeur compared to the others. A stone wall enclosed the tomb, with an arched stone gate at its center. In front of the gate stood a stone statue of the princess consort of West Lucosia. It was intricately carved and adorned with fresh flowers, a clear sign of regular visitation and worship. Alba held immense prestige in the West Lucosian monarchy, second only to Rufus. During the period when Rufus dedicated himself to military endeavors, defending against external threats and suppressing bandits, she efficiently managed all internal affairs of the West Lucosian monarchy, whether it was economic development, improvement of living conditions, or maintenance of social order. Alba organized everything meticulously. In challenging times, she worked alongside the common people, sharing labor and meals. It was devoid of the airs of royalty. Her efforts laid a solid foundation for the legendary life of Rufus, the invincible myth of the Black Dragon Army, and the current prosperity of the West Lucosian monarchy. Alba and Rufus collaborated to shape this world. Even after a decade, people continued to visit her tomb every day, expressing gratitude. Dustin felt his eyes moisten as he stood before the statue. The familiar visage and warm smile of his mother seemed as though it was frozen in time. Dustin didn't typically dwell on such thoughts, but in the current moment, a sense of warmth and nostalgia rushed over him as he observed the surroundings. "Mom, I'm sorry. Your son has been absent for far too long.